They say that nothing suits a man like money. And that could be true. Except sometimes it turns things around. And this is not a part of any fairy tale. We have seen that recently in North America, that money doesn't make a man attractive. It may make him president, but not, or you could disagree, of course. But this man I will tell you about, he also have money, not that amount, but enough from an old family, has a great mansion on top of the hill. 3 stories high, wooden house, wonderful. Great views on the lake, on the forest, and the village. And in his life was love, of course. But now it's so long ago. It's just the vague memories in black and white. There was a wife once. He can barely remember how it ended. Only the bitter feeling of the slamming door, the echo of that door in his heart, shutting things down, making color drop out of the nature, sinking into the soil. Still, he had money and years ahead of him. But now those years were not ahead of him so much anymore. They were setting in his hair like gray. They were growing into his face like wrinkles. And the hatred and the loneliness in the heart still pounding. Just one more chance would have been nice. Just the chance to say, I'm sorry. Can we try again? Can we do better? No, those words did not leave his lips. So unspoken, still he had a life. And he had a maid, which is very practical because then you don't have to do anything. So she would come and she would cook. She would make cakes, not as good as these, but decent cakes. She would serve him coffee. She would clean the house. And for a while it was enough. And he would never thank her. And after a while she would be spent and leave, and somebody else would come and do the same things, clean the same floors. And eventually those feelings would like slurp out of his mouth and into his words. And it's like, you call that cleaning? I think you're getting sloppy today. You didn't do your hair. Look at you. And then they started leaving the job earlier and earlier. And that only confirmed to him that women cannot be reached for. They're hopeless. They're unthankful. They're lazy. In the end, it was kind of a game to him to see how much can he do to them. How close can he go? How nasty can he be? To make them leave. He would walk around and find something wrong. That crumb is wrong, should have been there. Fired. He would do that. He would be so malicious in his speaking that nobody would come anymore. And finally it ran out, nobody came, nobody sought the job, and you know what happens then? Piles of plates in the kitchen just growing, changing colors. Dust balls fighting their own soccer games on the floor. Starving bellies, bad fruit from the pizzeria. It was hopeless. He put in a new ad, doubled the hire, and then one woman came. She knocked upon his door. He opened it, ready to fire her at instant. He hadn't fired anyone for weeks. But he realized you can't fire someone before they're hired, so he had to hire her. And she was, I think, I'm not sure about the word, maybe it's stubborn, and maybe that's a wrong word. Ikke så høj. Not as tall? Stumpy? Short? Short, shall do. She was short. and wide. She had like a silver helmet of hair to her shoulders. And she looked at him with big eyes and said, I will take the job. Okay. I really need it. I will do good. I can cook. I can clean. Let's see about that. He let her in and she went straight into the kitchen, had just one look around and started. And maybe she was an octopus. Maybe because there were arms all over just cleaning and all fixing and putting coffee on and and the kitchen was shining. How'd you do that? She turned around and smiled at him. And he wasn't used to that. It got through the armor. It's, oh. He had to man up, not smile back. Okay, you can stay for the night. We'll see about your job tomorrow. And he went down the hall, pointed her room, little bed, a wooden table, little candle, and decided he could always fire her in the morning. Now the dishes were done, he could get rid of her. But she made a sneak attack on him. She put buns in the oven, and the smell of that attacks his nose, his nostrils, straight into his heart, into those chambers of the heart that still belongs to the child. The way they smelled reminded him of his mother. Oh. He couldn't be sour. He just got up and put on his, whatever they are called, and went out there in the kitchen. She was one big smile. Good morning. Welcome. She poured him coffee and sat down and said, what do you want to do today? And he said, well, we shall clean the whole house and I will see how you're doing. Yes, that's a good idea, she said. What do you want for dinner? Oh, what a choice. How about? It was like she could read his mind. You want a stew? Yes, I do. Thank you. Don't mind. And then she got up and she walked down the hall and started scrubbing the floor. And now he's found himself again. He stood behind her, looked at her and said, you have quite a big butt. Actually, it's the biggest one I've ever seen. It should be a record in the record book. But she didn't care. She just moved on. And when she got up to change the water, she looked at him and smiled. And he just walked after her after day, following her trail, and just his words getting worse and worse and worse. She took no notice. Just turned around and smiled at him. More coffee. He couldn't put a finger anywhere to fire her. It was annoying. He had to be really careful not to like her. But one day she messed it up herself. She did it. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know the word in English. Kalveroulade was the mistake she made. Veal, roulade. Very, very nice dish. And she made it on purpose so good that he had to serve himself 3 times. That's not okay. He woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a terrible bellyache. That was her fault. She shouted, but she didn't come. He screamed she didn't come, and he decided to fire her right then and there. He got up, took his cane, out of bed, down the hall, shouting. But no reactions. With the cane, he pushed the door open, and there she was, sleeping, as if it was night. And then he saw she didn't blow out the candle, and next to it was a set of ears. And he forgot his bellyache. And he came closer, and she picked one of them up. They were made of wood, but they were totally perfect human ears. He couldn't believe it. He put them down, and he couldn't wait till the next morning. She was up before him and poured coffee for both of them and sat across the table from him and said, good morning, did you sleep well? No, he said. It was horrible. I had a bellyache, and I was in your room and you were sleeping, and I couldn't understand it. And then he leaned forward, just touched her hair a bit, Oh, it was the wooden ears, yes. I saw ears on the table. Your ears. And she turned red upon her neck. She looked down and she said yes. When I was a child, our house burned. It was a terrible fire. And my hair burned off, and so did most of my ears. I only had weird little lumps left afterwards. My hair grew back, but the other kids were teasing me with those. And worst of all, my ear channels, they closed in the fire. I can hear nothing. But you really look stupid when you don't have ears. So my father carved these for me. He was very good with a knife. He carved these so the other kids wouldn't tease me. And he made them fit so I can put them on. And now when I let my hair grow, nobody can see it. And he said, you're lying to me. You can hear. We're having a conversation. You're talking right now. No. She said, no. I can hear nothing. I can just see your lips move. And I can guess what you're saying. Because you are just a man. And while we're being honest, I've heard terrible rumors about you. The girls in the village speak so evil of you, how mean you are. And I feared coming here, but I really needed the job. I'm all alone in the world. And you have showed me nothing but kindness. You have smiled to me every time I've looked at you. You have eaten my food. You never gave me one bad word. And he realized this might be the chance. And he said, well, I'd like to ask you for a word. And then he proposed to her. And she said yes. And there was a lot of gossip in the village. But they didn't care. She didn't even hear it. And he took her home, and he didn't carry her across the doorstep because that would be dangerous. But they got into bed together. They got ready. He took out his false teeth, and she took off her ears. And they went to bed together. Turned off the light. And as he lay there next to her, feeling her back against his chest, he took away the gray hair from her neck and kissed her right on the neck skin and whispered, I love you. And her ears heard nothing of it, but the vibrations of it went straight into her heart. And it is with the heart you truly hear. Thank you very much.
I thought I was going to tell you one story, but now I've decided to tell you another. So you'll get one. We started with the wind. And now, there once was a dandelion. You know those fields, they're completely yellow and they're beautiful. And when the wind comes across them, it's like music. You almost see the music dancing. Well, these dandelions, they were all sort of strong and they were stretching towards the sun. They moved as the sun moved across the field. And there was one dandelion, extra tall. And she was so proud, and she would look across them all. And that head was full of ideas and full of little young ones, all sort of energetic. And she would sort of say, well, no, you have to do and this and that. And she knew everything that they would have to learn. And she tried to pass it on. But there was one little, what would you call it? One little seed, which knew its own way. Maybe you know that feeling. It knew exactly how it wanted to be. And as the yellow head changed to white, it stretched even faster and further than all the others. And it said, hey, wind, take me away. There's a spell that's been on me. And that spell has made me hold on to this wicked, wicked person down there. And I should be out there in the world, flying around and learning all the lovely things, not from you. And a wind, a little sort of coy wind, blew around and lifted up that little seed into the wind. And up and down and round that little seed went with the wind. And and she was so wild about that feeling. Here, there, and everywhere that seed just blew with the little wind. And they flew across a large stone rock, which was right at the end of the forest. And they looked down at it and they laughed. How foolish to stay there. Ha ha! Look at us, here we go. Woo! And the wind took that little seed and made it fly here, there, and everywhere, up and down. And the joy of being free was there in that seed. Well, you know what happens. This was the summertime. And in the summertime, the winds are warm, but sometimes they fill themselves and become stronger. And as they come towards the fall, they fill themselves with water. And every time there's a battle of winds, they grow. And that's what happened with the little coyish wind. He became stronger and stronger, and this little seed would sort of go, hey, well, how about me? I see you sort of filling yourself up with hot air, and they're going across there and fighting. What about me? What will happen if you suddenly go to sea and I'm stuck in one of the sails out at sea? Ah, said the wind, you enjoy it, you like it, you come up and down here and there and everywhere, and I can see it on you. You enjoy the ride. And she goes, yeah, but... And inside that little seed, something started growing. A feeling of, there must be more. There must be more. And what happened was that at one point where the wind was just about to go out to sea, it came flying over the field at her home and right by the rock. And she released herself from the wind and fell onto that rock. And she stood there and expected to be noticed, but the rock said nothing. He was silent, quiet. And suddenly she thought, maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have dropped onto the rock. I mean, she looked for the wind, but he was far gone. She could see the storms raging over the sea. And then she felt sorry for herself and she started crying. And those tears, like magic, they woke up that rock. And the rock said, hey, I heard this morning the little birds were saying there's wind and frost in the air. Slip into that little crack to the right of you. She looked down and she said, who? She said, yeah, let yourself slip into there. If the snow comes this morning, then you'll be safe. Well, she had no choice. If the storm was coming, where would she be? So she slipped into that little crack of the rock, and there she was. And it was warm. There was moss, and she felt good. And above her, the storms came. And then she heard nothing because the snow had covered the rock, and she fell asleep. And she slept snug in the moss until drip, drip, drops of water dripped on her head. And she tried to lift her head, but it dropped on the back of her head, and she was going, what is this? And then the sun came down, and she realized that spring had come, but she tried to look up, but she couldn't. And then she realized that she'd suddenly grown a head. And she thought, oh dear, I'm going to be just like my mother. Oh no, I tried so hard not to be just like my mother, and here I am. Oh, and she tried to lift her feet, but she couldn't. She was stuck. Oh, and slowly something happened, and she looked at herself and she realized that something green was growing to the left and to the right of her, and she suddenly could look up because her head stretched And then she could hear buzzing. Oh, there was such a buzzing going on in her head, and she thought, oh no, I've got children. Not just a few of them. I've got a head full of children, and they're talking here, there, and everywhere, and they need me to be wise on their behalf. Woof! She grew out of the stone, and, well, the stone, he looked at her, and she said, oh, aren't you beautiful? Look at you. Look at those golden locks, left, right, and center in the wind, and there you are, following the sun in the morning until it goes down. And she said, yeah, well, it actually feels quite nice. I feel quite good. And she got used to them talking in her head, and she got used to telling them what to do and sharing the stories of where she'd been. Oh, she'd been here, there, and everywhere, and she'd been up and down, and they went, oh, so will we. And she went, no. No, you will be sensible. You will go into that field and you will become dandelions. And she could feel that some of them didn't really think so. You think, they said. And suddenly she felt the wind, because sun up and sun down, well, sun up and sun down, and sun up and sun down, and all these things that she needed to do with all the voices in her head. She suddenly felt that she needed a change. And that wind suddenly reminded her of what she'd been and how free she'd been. And suddenly he was there, and she went, oh, there you are. Take me with you. She stretched, and she felt that she was locked. She couldn't go anywhere. She felt that pain made her stay. And he said, where have you been? You disappeared. And she said, well, where were you? You went. He said, well, look good. Thank you. And off he went. Whew, she could see the clouds and the winds and the storms building up again. Just at that moment when she realized that life was actually quite good. There she was. She had a head full of very wise children, and they would all go their own way. And the rock, he'd been good to her as well. Suddenly she heard a child say, oh, mother, look, there's a dandelion. And the hand came so close, she thought, oh, I'm going to die. But the mother said, no, don't take it. Don't, let it be. Now just think how difficult it must be for a dandelion to grow in the middle of a rock. And they went, and they looked at it, and they nodded. That was a beautiful dandelion. And she thought within herself, well, if you think it's difficult to grow and become a beautiful flower in a rock, just think how impossible it is to become what you need to become in the wind. So, we've been in many places. We've been with women, strong and wise, and men who became wiser. We've been with passion and dreams. We've been with all sorts of things. And I hope, as with stories have the way of being given to you to give to others. And I hope you've enjoyed your tea and tales, and that you will let the stories move on from heart to heart. Thank you for today. I bring up. So, thank you, Pernille Stockflet, Kasper Sørensen, and I'm Laura Kamps. Thank you. Yes, thank you for coming.